have a story for you guys as well from yesterday. Story time. So yesterday in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So the province of Ontario. I'm gonna break this down for people who don't even understand Canada. Like the U.S., you have New York and you have Massachusetts, or you have like all these different places and states and stuff like that. Ontario has a provincial holiday, not a nationwide holiday, a provincial holiday called Civic Holiday. That was yesterday. Civic Holiday in Ontario is called Simcoe Day. So in Toronto specifically, they call it Simcoe Day. So John Simcoe is a gentleman who basically founded Toronto, right? So every time I put it in quotations because there are people living here before, First Nations people, but establishing the city as Toronto, John Simcoe. One of the things that Simcoe is famous for, this is one of those things that makes me think, because in Canada we're so quick to hide our shame history, but there's some points of like pride too that don't get that mentioned. So I'm going to give credence to this. So John Simcoe is known for one interaction in particular that stands out in my mind. There's a black lady by the name of Chloe Cooley, I believe it is Cooey, Cooley. So Chloe Cooley was a woman who was enslaved in the Niagara region. So this area where I live used to be called Upper Canada in the 1790s. So in Upper Canada, this lady was enslaved, and her slave owner had tied her up, put her on a boat, and was going to row to New York, upstate New York, to sell her as a slave. Okay. While they're trying to get her on the boat, she was fighting and making such a big scene that another man had to come to her rescue, and come to the slave owner's assistance. So the two of them bound this lady, put her on this boat, and she was making such a big scene that was drawing attention to everyone, and they saw these two men taking her off on this boat to sell her in upstate New York. There were two men that were on the boat that saw this happening, a man by the name of Grizzly and a black loyalist whose name I can't remember at this time, but those two saw it. And because this enslaved woman was making such a big scene, and these people had to come and help her, these guys that were on the boat as well, who weren't helping her but saw this, thought that obviously this was wrong, and they went to John Simcoe. John Simcoe was the lieutenant governor for Canada, or on Upper Canada at the time. So they went to him and said, "This is wrong, you need to do something about this." So he tried to pass an anti-slavery law, put it into the House of Commons, and if any of my facts are wrong, please correct me on this. Went to the House of Commons, told them about what was happening, got this slave owner arrested, charged with disturbing the peace. The slave owner's charges were dropped. He got off free, scotch-free. The Constitution didn't change. He was trying to get an anti-slavery law in effect, and he was only able to get an anti-slavery agreement passed. That anti-slavery agreement meant that anyone who was a slave would remain a slave, but anyone who was born into slavery would be freed at the age of 25. The slave owners would be responsible for the upbringing of this child till they're 25, then they'd be set free. Nobody was allowed to be imported as a slave or sold as a slave. So it was a precursor to the anti-slavery laws that were going to come into place a few years later. So John Simcoe was key in passing the first laws that banned slavery in Upper Canada. So I was going to do a whole post on it yesterday, and I didn't get a chance to go down to the statue and stuff, but I thought I'd say it right now because I thought it was pretty cool for the amount of things that are just secrets about Canada. The fact that John Simcoe, one of the founders of Toronto, was at the forefront of trying to end slavery in Upper Canada. He's a main person in it. So if you back up to this Chloe Cooley story, the reason why they had her on a boat and trying to sell her is because they had gotten word that abolition was coming, that people who had slaves in Upper Canada would have to free their slaves. So this slave owner thought, well, if I sell my slaves before abolition comes into play, at least I'll make some money off these people. So he had wrapped her up and was trying to get her to the States for sale before laws came into place to give all the slaves back and make them people instead of cattle as they're considered in Upper Canada. So credence to John Simcoe, founder of Toronto, for being a leader in the anti-slavery work back in the day. So shout out to that. So I celebrate Simcoe Day. There may be some days I don't celebrate, but that is one on the Martin celebrate days for Canada. So there's a little history lesson for today.